Melissa, if your bike could talk to you at the end of one of your signature classes, what would it be saying to you?
Great question. It would say, thank you for going so easy on your resistance as the teacher.
That was not the answer I was expecting.
That's a really boring answer. But to try and keep it all below board or above board, it would say thank you for keeping your resistance light and not showing off. Yeah.
Okay. I'm hoping we're going to delve into that in a few minutes.
That might have been a can of worms.
That's really interesting. Welcome back to the Performance Physique podcast. My name is Arj. I am obviously your head coach, and today we are joined by the powerhouse that is Melissa. Melissa Power is the owner and founder of Cadence Cycling, London's top-rated boutique cycling studio, and also the founder of MPowered. We're going to be speaking to her about her vision to raise standards and work with evidence-based coaches, improving what indoor cycling really is for you and I. But before we delve into all of those little bits of detail, we're going to hear a little bit about Miss Melissa and her journey to here today. So, Melissa, let's rewind the clock. We've never spoken before, so it's nice to have you on board. Thank you very much. Tell me a little bit about your origin story. You know, did you like PE at school, that kind of stuff?
Well, the answer is... The answer is I hated PE. I went to school in North London in Camden, and every PE lesson, and I have admitted this to my parents and even my PE teachers, we would bunk off, we'd walk down Camden High Street and we'd go and sit outside the Cafe Nero. I didn't do any PE at school at all. Never liked sport, never got into it. I wish I had.
Wow.
And now for my child, my baby, I will be saying, what do you want to do? Let's get you into it pronto. But I didn't get into it. I did more, I was in the orchestra, I played music, I did languages. So we sort of never did PE. And it was only until just after university, so I must have been 20. I had a really, really bad road traffic accident. I got knocked off my bike and I broke my arm, my leg. I thought I'd broken my neck.
Oh
my
goodness.
Nose got cut in half. Yeah. And in order to recuperate, I went to the gym to start. The first time I'd ever been to a gym to start strengthening.
Really?
Yeah, I know. It's mad, isn't it? To start strengthening my leg again and all this stuff. And I went into a spin class and I thought, like this, or an indoor cycling class as we should say, but I like this, and I got the bug and I loved it so much that within a year I had completely transformed my approach and my love for exercise. I'd qualified as an indoor cycling instructor. And I started to teach part-time because at the time I was working in radio and then went on to work in TV. I know my last job was coming up with the catchphrases for catchphrase, and after that I was like, it's time to call it a day. When you're in a meeting for 45 minutes about how quickly to show the bananas in pyjamas, you start to question. But I was teaching, I'm really fast forwarding here, but I was teaching indoor cycling sort of before work, after work, at all the kind of big boutiques in central London. And I just thought, God, this is the bit that I'm looking forward to. This is the 6 a.m. in Soho, then finishing and then teaching another class. And I I suppose 10 years ago, then went full into, a career change, I suppose. But yeah, that's the very brief origin story.
That's absolutely incredible. You came up with the catchphrase. I need to scrap all these questions over here. How on earth does one do that?
You have to come up with the catchphrase and then you have to come up with the animation. So you might think like mad as a March hare, and then you would think, okay, how hard do I want to make this? Do I start on a hare and then like pull back from the hare? Like honestly, it was fun, but there were, like any job, there's still a lot of it that becomes not fun.
Yeah, of course.
And I worked on like Surprise This Morning, like loads of different shows, but it wasn't for me. And I think to work in TV, you have to love working in TV, and I didn't. But yeah,
wow.
Luckily I love it now. Yeah.
So how many years though have you therefore been working in what is now your career in indoor cycling?
20. God,
20 years.
Yeah, nearly 20 years. I keep saying, 15, and then I keep getting older.
Yeah. I've got a deal.
Yeah, it will be. Let me get in on it. Pretty much 20 years of indoor cycling. I've seen it go from change dramatically over the years, and yeah,
absolutely. So let's go right back to the start then. Hated PE at school. Obviously you had other interests, which is perfectly fine, but why the hate?
That's allowed. I think it was probably because there wasn't. I went to a comprehensive in North London, and whilst it was fantastic in lots of areas, I don't remember sport being one of those. Like it was very academically good, and it did like Latin and ancient Greek. But I remember one PE lesson. Our teacher was like, "Right, girls, put all your valuables in this safe," and she left it on the side of the concrete football pitch, and someone just took it and ran off.
No.
I think if you wanted to do it, but I just remember, rounders in cold fields, and I think we'd go and play tennis, but there wasn't any. None of it was particularly groundbreaking. Maybe there wasn't that much funding. I don't know. I think probably if you wanted to, you could have, but it was very much like get the trampolines out on a Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, this sounds so familiar.
Does it? Yeah.
Like
Whereas now I see what people have got available. I mean, this was a long time ago. I've got available, and you look at the kind of the sports and the opportunities they've got, and the different I've taught indoor cycling in schools.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or I've taught in like incredible studios, and very, very wealthy schools have sort of booked us out on a Wednesday afternoon, or. So yeah, I never did, because my kind of weekends were taken up with like choirs and orchestras, and it was all very much that. I think when you're a kid, you kind of either go sort of sport or kind of creative.
100%, absolutely. I can really empathize with the kind of almost the narrowing that you have to do, isn't it? You have to make a decision, and perhaps that's an area that maybe we have balanced a little bit more now. So then you obviously had your horrendous accident whilst you're at university, did you say, where you just finished work?
So I always liked cycling, and I would cycle to and from everywhere, and I had a bike where the lights came on but only if you pedalled. It was fantastic. And that I was in Manchester at the time. I went to university in Manchester, and had the accident up there on my bike, and that's when I first started going to the gym.
Okay, and it's those.
And I think at that point I also kind of became aware that, like, at university you put weight on and you eat unhealthily, and I remember thinking like, oh, I'm just a bit fed up of this. And I really remember, not to sound evangelical, but I remember like a day of thinking, I just want to turn all this around. Like I'm fed up of kind of like not eating well and not feeling like, and I think probably at the time, gyms were starting to become, I think my first gym was a Bannatyne's at the top of Canal Street in Manchester, and it was kind of the first sort of like, not boutique gym, but it was definitely more, than you wheel your bikes out from the side of a YMCA type gym. And I really clearly remember that day of going, right, and I think I lost about 3 or 4 stone, and like just got really strong, and then like from there it's just been I've just, I'm sure you're the same, like totally addicted to fitness, and I do CrossFit in my spare time,
right? Okay.
When I can't get into my own classes, so yeah.
So
I love it. I can't imagine not, like, when I think not doing it for 20 years, it just seems crazy.
That's really interesting. So there is a real defining moment where you said this has to change.
Totally.
And then is the one where you went from, I'm guessing you were an employee originally, and then you started Cadence and MPowered, is that right?
Yeah, I'd sort of worked in, I mean, any dark basement in London that you can think of. I have
in
I've
cycling.
yeah. We don't talk about Thursday afternoons. Yeah, in cycling, and I'd done, all the kind of the big names, and saw what was happening, and saw the kind of the way that people were, or more likely weren't trained, and the standard of when I did my indoor cycling certification 20 odd years ago, I look at what I now teach and what that was, and that it's just, I wouldn't even call them the same thing.
Right.
And so I'd worked in a lot of places, and I kind of noticed that, and I'd been master trainer in quite a few places, and sort of saw that the level of indoor cycling instructor coming to teach was very, very there was a huge lack of education.
Okay.
And I was looking at all the different certifications, and there's a lot of places where you just add on your indoor cycling cert to your PT cert. And even, the kind of bigger ones, I don't want to name any names, so I won't. Yeah. But even the kind of bigger ones don't teach you how to teach a class. So they might show you, this is a bike. If you're lucky, they might explain what watts are and what RPM is. If you're lucky, they might show you how to set it up. But I get probably 40% of the people who come and do my certification have already been certified. Yeah. But I think the level of indoor cycling, it's one of those disciplines where the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher is so huge. And I think that's less obvious in some, I may be wrong, some disciplines kind of like HIT, or where you can kind of, if someone's given a class plan, they can kind of deliver it. Yeah. I might be wrong, but I think with indoor cycling, what goes into teaching a class is so humongous that we get people who don't submit their assessments because they think, I didn't know how much went into doing it, and I love the course, but because I think to teach indoor cycling badly is easy, but nobody comes back to your classes. To teach it well, a playlist still will take me 3 hours, because it's like, I'm sure when you sit down and do your programming, you're programming, you're thinking it, scientifically, you're thinking it, how is this gonna, and then you find your music, and then you go, oh no, I could get a better track, and then
that's it, isn't it? No one thinks about that.
No one thinks about it, and the best teachers go, I'm gonna find a song to fit my programming. But most teachers go, oh, I love this Beyonce track. And I go, well, it's 110 RPM, so there's nothing that would apply to, because that's too high for seated power. That's too, do you know what I mean? And everyone else goes, oh, no, I just like the song, we'll make it work. Yeah. And then you just get no one making it work and no one able to do it. So, so sorry, to cycle back, lol. There was...
I'm going to clip that. That's going in.
I thought, let me educate people and start to create a much higher brand and a much higher type of indoor cycling teacher. And then sort of that's been going for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I think we've certified nearly 700 people now. Most of London, Brighton, and a lot of the Middle East. But yeah, and then about a year and a half ago, the day I found out I was pregnant, we decided to open Cadence and sign the lease.
Wow.
Yeah, so that brings us sort of up to there.
So MPowered came first, then Cadence in 23, is that right?
Yes, 23. Yeah, 23. Yeah, blimey, yeah.
Awesome. So you've had a really busy couple of years then, really. With I imagine that there was a big growth spurt with MPowered coming in, and your SimSpa affiliated, isn't it? That's the training provider, or accreditation, should I say. And how did you find that whole process, getting accreditation for a new course?
It was, well, at the time it was with reps. I don't know if you remember.
Of course I do, unfortunately.
should we just get our dressing gowns and our pipes now? So when I decided that I wanted to write it, I looked into what was involved. It was more work than my dissertation, my A-levels and my GCSEs put together, probably. The amount, and for good reason, the amount of work, because the course is now enhanced, which is the top level of education you can deliver, which was so proud of. But it was the amount of work. I wrote an entire syllabus, and because I wanted people to have the education not just about indoor cycling, there's a whole anatomy and physiology pre-course modules that you have to do, which is I wanted it to be equivalent to level 2 type learning.
Excellent.
It's not a level 2, but I wanted it to people to go out with that knowledge that you'd get on the gym floor.
Yep.
And that, then what I also wanted to include, which no other courses really do, is the performance riding aspect, so that people aren't just going, oh, this is how you choreograph a track. If someone says, I need to improve my FTP, I'm finding it really hard to stay, to work in my threshold zone, or I want to improve my VO2 max, how can I do that? And as an indoor cycling instructor, that is so key, because if you can't do that, it's like being a PT and not knowing what a kilogram is.
Yeah, this is really refreshing to hear, Melissa. Really refreshing.
Yeah. So I wanted to include everything. So my course is kind of the only one that covers rhythm and power and performance riding. And if you're a really good teacher, you'll kind of mix all of them very subtly. The really good question. I remember sitting at my table, this is however long ago it was, and just typing and getting to like 10 o'clock and going, I'll just do one more lesson plan, or just do one more thing. It took I've never worked so hard.
Wow.
Never worked so hard for anything.
And it's paid off though. You're seeing 700, you've said now, 700 instructors around the world. I take it you go out to the Middle East to deliver, do you? Or?
Yeah, we just did one in Dubai actually in November.
Excellent.
But a lot. It's a good question, because we're actually now doing much more consultancy for studios, because, and I don't know if this is the case with other kind of disciplines, but indoor cycling, the UK and the US, I think, are the only two places where you have to have a certification to teach it.
No.
Yep. So if you go to Amsterdam, so I go out to the Netherlands quite a lot to teach filmed classes for a company called Cycle Masters, and all the studios there, you can say, hey, I really like indoor cycling, and they'll go, have you ever taught before? Have you ever got any qualifications? You go, no. And they go, come and audition for us. And they go, that girl's got vibes. And then they will put you in a and this is what I'm battling against. Oh my God. Then they'll put you in a training few weeks, and at the end you'll be able to teach them. So you're not certified, you haven't got any fitness qualifications, but because you've done that studio's academy, you can teach for them. So what we actually found is that when we went to take it to Spain or to different parts of Europe, the only people that wanted to do it, well, the main people that were ones that wanted to better themselves and educate themselves, and they were the real deal. But sadly, there are not enough of those people, because you get a lot of people teaching spin who might do it for a year and then they don't want to invest in themselves because they've just gone, oh, it's free training, I'll teach it for a bit, and they don't have the knowledge. And this is the case in so many studios, even in London, where there is absolutely no evidence-based coaching. They're getting on the bike and they're performing, and this is one thing that's really getting my go at the moment, which is indoor cycling has become a performative sport in, I'd say, 60% of studios. And the studios with 80 bikes, and the instructor gets on the stage and no one is clipped in, no one knows what they're doing, and the instructor just goes, here is my class plan, and plows through it. There's probably 3 people in the front row who are doing it. There's someone sitting 4 rows back eating a banana, doing their emails, because it's just become, they can't be seen. Like at Cadence, we have 14 bikes, and all my teachers adapt their class plans on the fly. If there's one new person that we think, hey, they might not be able to do that, we're not going to make the whole class do it because we don't want them to feel embarrassed and not come back.
Yeah, I mean, it's coaching, right? It's not.
It's coaching, it's not performing.
Exactly
right.
I really, really understand that. And if it makes you feel any better or any worse, cycling or indoor cycling is not alone in that. It's a
Really?
battle at the moment where it's there's a massive fad around running, isn't there, right now? And that's a big thing to try and ensure that people understand that likes don't necessarily mean knowledge. And if we...
Well, it's the best trainers I know put the don't put much on social media. I put bits and bobs on social media, but the best trainers are the ones working.
Yeah, you don't have time
and coaching.
To post, right?
Exactly. I always think with social media, I go, oh my God, haven't done a post, and then I'm like, well, actually, I've just been training, 20 people, and it's so much. That's so interesting you say that about running, because I was trying to think about what other sports, because I think it doesn't happen in CrossFit. Like, you don't get your CrossFit teacher suddenly being like, sorry guys, I'm just going to PB my snatch, if everybody just wants to watch. You don't have it. I don't think you have it in boxing. You wouldn't get the instructor being like, right guys, I'm just going to have a little spar. But I don't know why, but in indoor cycling, it just seems... It's become a platform for people to show off, and the rise of the superstar instructor is something that it should be the demise of the superstar instructor. It shouldn't be about the celebrity. It should be about this person is empathetic. There is a huge lack of empathy in indoor cycling, and I think if more teachers were empathetic and understood that, Jill from accounts, who's in her late 40s and wants to try it and has never done it, might not be able to do single press-ups at 90 RPM out the saddle. And if more people understood that, you would get a lot less people say, oh, I hate spin. When we opened the studio, the amount of people that went, oh, I hate spin. Really? And I said, you know what? Yeah, and I was like, do you know what? I know what you mean, because I hate that type of spin. But it's really interesting to hear that about running. I didn't realise that either. So
if people come to you and they come to Cadence, is there a requirement for a particular level of fitness or an age bracket?
Absolutely not.
No,
we've got people who our oldest member is 78.
Nice.
She's absolutely fantastic, the most glamorous person I've ever seen. Said, you look amazing, and she went, Botox, darling. And so no, not at all. My mantra is everything we teach, everyone can do. Wow. And physically, there's a type of indoor cycling that about 60% of the population aren't able to do because of their age or their gender or just existing, which is these very, very high cadences. And there's something that there might be an equivalent in running. I'd be really keen to hear it. But this thing of double time, where you're moving your feet very, very fast in and out the saddle. And it's the only kind of thing I could equate it to might be running downhill for a very long time. Where there's no resistance pushing back. It's just how fast you can move your legs. And it's so dangerous, and the people that teach are kind of, in their very early 20s, and they might have been dancers, but most people can't move their legs that fast. I definitely can't, and I wouldn't want to move my legs at anything over 100 RPM. And it's these fads that look good on TikTok or look good on Instagram that are so dangerous. And I always say that if you filmed, we've had so many people, because we got Best Studio and TimeOut, which was amazing, and we had PR people and the press go, hey, can we come down and film a class? And we were like, no, because it's incredibly boring to watch. It's just people riding safely inside, having fun. Whereas, these things on TikTok where people are doing the Macarena and riding one-legged, and there's just people. I always look in the mirror in those videos, and you just look at the class, looking at the teacher, and no one's doing it.
Really?
People are reading a newspaper. Yeah, no one's doing it because they can't do it.
Wow, I'm going to do that. I'm going to look in the mirror.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's your mantra for life now.
So let's take it to that next stage then. So, you've mentioned you've seen indoor cycling through its journey. I remember this is my 20th year now myself, and I remember first seeing, they've got these bikes and they're doing these indoor cycling classes, and about 3 years later it got really popular, and there's been dips and all those kind of movements that have occurred over the years. What kind of experience do you want people to have then at Cadence? What do they walk away with physically, mentally, emotionally when they've been to one of your sessions?
Firstly, I want them to feel included, and that if they couldn't do something, it wasn't because it was physically out of their body's capability. It was just because they might need to be a bit fitter, or they might need to find their position, or they might just need to work on their core strengths. So I think the first kind of thing that I wanted was this feeling of inclusivity and this feeling of community, and I think that's lacking in so many studios where you just become a number, and you're one of 50 bikes or even one of 80 bikes in places. And what we do is, and I think, you and I have worked in fitness for so long that I think if we were to walk in a gym, we'd just be like, oh, cool, look at all this really cool stuff. Oh my God, what have they got? Whereas most people walk into a gym and they go, I am terrified. Yeah. Like, everyone's looking at me. I'm wearing the wrong leggings. Oh my God, I didn't know that I needed that type of shoe. All that kind of stuff. So my main kind of concern initially is to make people feel more at home than they've ever felt. And we literally, as soon as people come into the studio, we shake their hands. How are you? Welcome. I'm going to show exactly what to do. This is your cubby hole. Here's your cleats. How are you? How's your day? Wow. And just kind of make people feel at home. And I think it's also understanding that some people, I've had, people before go, oh God, I think they really didn't like me. They were really rude. And you go, no. They were terrified. They were absolutely terrified. And people close up because it's like me walking into a yoga class. I'd be like, oh my God, I don't know where even to start. I've forgotten the names of all the muscles. So I think the first thing is to make people feel included. And then always say in their first class, I say, listen, if you stand up today, it's a bonus. So your first class, most people sit down, just enjoy the music, kind of just be in the room. Because for a lot of people, and I think it's really important to remember that, people are doing exercise for so many different reasons, and a lot of mental health reasons. And I've heard horror stories about, and I've seen instructors, go over to people's bike and turn their resistance up. And I'm like, oh my goodness, if you've just got someone who's come to spin to try and deal with anxiety or depression or whatever, and you get someone touching their bike, they're like, well, I'm like, it's like touching someone's demon. If you've read Northern Lights, it's like, you just don't. So I always kind of say to people, there are zero expectations at all. And then my focus is to make people feel stronger and fitter, and hopefully to make them laugh a bit, and just make them feel like, wow, for 45 minutes I didn't have to think about anything else. That's our signature class. I mean, zones, you really have to think about exercise because there's numbers up on the screen. But I always say signature is a class for people who don't want to think or don't want to remember they're exercising. And like zones is a class if you really want to think about exercise.
I really like that. Yeah. That's a nice way of looking at it.
I love thinking about exercise. so I love doing zones. The more exercise, the better. Let's talk about it.
Did you create those two deliberately with that in mind then, that you loved thinking about it? Or?
So it kind of, I think it came more as a result, because actually my partner and my business partner, who opened the studio with me, because he's in film and TV, but there was, because of the writer's strike last year, there was a huge dip in work. So he was like, let's do the studio, blah, 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 and have a baby.
Why not?
Why not? And he hates exercising. He really dislikes it. I know. I'm open to spin the studio. And he does. He's like, yeah, I really, really love signature because it doesn't feel like I'm exercising. And he was like, but he's quite addicted to zones now because he's chasing his FTP.
We're all competitive at heart.
Yeah, I know. Because we when everyone does FTP tests, geeky, we always give like people a little certificate, and he always makes certificates. He's like, oh my God, someone got higher than me. I need to get back in that studio. So, but he always says, he said, I'll do it because I'm competitive, but I don't like it because every minute of the class, I feel like I am exercising. So yeah, it's really interesting. So yeah, I want people to feel stronger and just to feel like they just had a really lovely time and they felt really valued and included, and there was no element of fear.
Yeah.
And there was no element of feeling like, I think indoor cycling can be really cliquey. You know, there's the whole kind of front row memes and all this kind of stuff. And then, you know, what percentage of, you know, people would identify as being a front row person in life, if that was a way to identify? Not many. Yeah. Most people are just, you know, getting their leggings out from 3 years ago and, you know, just dropped 3 kids off or made lasagna, and they're just sitting on the bike and thinking, oh my God, like I don't want to be threatened by people in the front row. So we are very much anti that energy.
So you're building a community realistically in your own studio. Running has a massive community. Now I work in a range of sports, and, you know, depending on what that sport is, sometimes it comes naturally. Running hasn't always, to be quite honest. It's quite a solitary sport, but in the last few years these running clubs have really popped up, and that's a can of worms in itself. But, you know, I have a Friday night track club group, which is adults who it sounds like that usually 1 in 4 weeks is zones and then the rest is signature. So
okay.
that's the way it works, and that's a real community, and we have social meetups and stuff like that. Do you guys try to do social events, or?
It's really, really hard, because the one thing that we're up against is our space, because we did this entirely ourselves using our life savings. We didn't have any investment at all.
Wow, okay, well done.
And yeah, so we're in the basement of a building which is a PT studio. So what we're lacking, which we don't have like a big smoothie bar, or, you know, all the things that these other, I think we always kind of compare it to like a noodle restaurant in the East End, which people queue down the block for, and it hasn't got like an amazing bar with posh cocktails, but the food is fantastic. And we always sort of say that's a bit like Cadence. Like, we don't have a smoothie bar, we don't have like a Barber's, we don't have anything like that. We don't even have changing rooms. We've got a massive like disabled loo where people can get changed, but because we're so residential, when we kind of surveyed people, and especially after COVID, everybody said, no, I go home for a shower. Yeah. It seemed to be only in the city where people needed changing rooms. So we just thought, well, look, we either do this without changing rooms or we don't do it. And actually, it's been absolutely fine. But what I would love to have is a kind of reception desk area where people could just sit, and we don't have that. But unless anybody wants to give me hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Good plug.
yeah.
Contact Melissa at hello at Cadence.
I just give you my sort code and account number. But that's the kind of community. I think that would help the kind of community, because we, you know, people chat in class, but it's kind of, you come in, you get your cleats, you sit down. And, you know, we do have that, but that's the one element that I would love to kind of have more of. And I think I've definitely seen that with running clubs, that huge social, you know, element. I mean, I need to talk to you more about running, because I am a terrible runner. I've never been good at running. And I don't know how to get better at it. And I just resent it because I can't do it.
We'll do a session, Melissa. That'll be really fun. You know what you need to do? You need to build an advert which says, you might have done this already, we don't have changing rooms, we don't have this, but we do have the best class in the city, or the best class in the country. I think that really struck a chord when you said that with me, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something which I see an awful lot of things sold in sports and fitness, which, to be quite honest, they're not going to offer you anything. You know, you're just talking about some kind of extra product, or, you know, that smoothie, like you said. But
well, that's the kind of, I think what we are is all substance and no style. And I think a lot of people are masking the lack of education or evidence-based coaching with a lot of style, so that by the time they get into the ride room, if the teaching isn't that great, well, they can come out and take a selfie next to, you know, a really cool neon sign saying, like, I've just had my whatever. And I'm like, well, we can't offer that, so we just have to deliver incredible teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about teaching then. Yeah. Go on, Melissa, you were going to say something then.
No, I was just going to say, you know, I think that a lot of companies and when I do a lot of consultancy, it's what people are investing is they're trying to kind of invest in tech rather than invest in the people that work the tech. Like we were at a trade show and we saw this bike and it kind of it goes up and down. It kind of like mirrors hills, and we said, so how does it work then? He said, like there's classes on the bike and you can pick the classes. And we were like, well, no, so who's teaching the classes? And he went, I don't know, just anyone. And we were like, okay, there's the problem. You've spent like millions on a bike that can go up a bit of a hill, but you haven't invested in any of the people. And I think that there just needs to be much more investment in education rather than tech.
And you're providing that.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a very serious journey. That's something I'm really passionate about, the education element. And hopefully I'm passionate because I was a university lecturer, but if I wasn't passionate about it, yeah. But that's a.
You're too cool for that, man.
That's exactly what I thought. I remember I once started what session was it? It was like hard science, whatever it was. I can't remember.
Okay.
And on the weekend, I'm a wannabe surfer, by the way.
Okay, brilliant.
I have a surfboard. I dream of being a surfer.
Are you near the sea?
No, I'm in the furthest place from the sea.
I was going to say.
I used to work in Loughborough a lot, and sports.
Okay. And, capital of sports.
Exactly. Stick the surfboard on top of the car, drive around Loughborough, and everyone would be like, "What's going on?" So I'm driving down to catch a few waves in the morning. I'd drive from there to Cornwall, surf.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, go there, come back a few hours.
That's like a 9-hour drive.
It was crazy, but I used to do that an awful lot, and I got maybe 1% better at surfing. I still have the board, and I'm still determined to be great. But back to my actual thing is, I was like, I'm going to deliver this class, and it always needs to be different. And I just started because on the Sunday in Nazaré in Portugal, a guy called Andrew Cotton rode a 90-foot wave, and I was like, this is cool.
Wow.
And we spent the first 7 minutes of that seminar just watching this clip over and over again. I remember someone from the leadership team walked in whilst I was watching this on the screen. And then they just stayed for a bit of the lesson. And I was like, right, let's pause it there, guys. And let's discuss. And I've just tied it in, the whole thing. And afterwards, the leadership was like, love how you're bringing in relevant content and all this kind of stuff. In my head, and I hope they hear this, I was just like, this is awesome, isn't it? This guy's riding a massive wave, and I've met him.
You're like, I brought in that because you came in the room. Otherwise, we'd have just watched it on repeat. And again, one more time for those in the back.
I just remember it was a Monday 9 a.m. lecture, and none of the students wanted to be in uni. They were always hungover, etc., etc. And
lots of grandparents dying that trimester.
Exactly. And they all started turning up on Mondays. They knew Arj was going to do something unusual. So that's my
that's
argument.
wicked. That's so cool.
Talking about your vision for education then, what do you think makes a great coach?
Adaptation. So I think the best, and empathy.
Yeah.
And knowing and making a class that you program and then you scale up and you scale down.
Yeah.
You don't program for the best or program for the worst. And I think if you program a class correctly, and this takes huge amounts of knowledge and experience and wisdom, that every single person can come out of that with the workout that they wanted. Because sometimes the workout that people want isn't the workout that we think that they want or that we would want. And, I think it's only since I became a studio owner that I probably became more sympathetic to people that don't like exercise, because I kind of go, well, if you're not going to do it and go full throttle, what's the point? I think that would probably be the old me. And now I'm thinking, do you know what, if you've just shown up and done a class, this might have been the first exercise that you have ever done, and what you got from that class was going, oh my God, I went to a spin studio and I've never been to one before and I was terrified, and then the next time you might do something different. So I think if you're, and it's also kind of like, when I'm training my teachers at Cadence, I'm like, what you're teaching is, like, for example, with gear ranges, you're giving these gear ranges, but you're also knowing that the shy or the newest person is going to go a gear under, and then someone who eats triathlons for breakfast is probably going to go 2 gears over. So yes, you're giving a gear range, but you're also giving a gear range having second guessed what people are going to do what you haven't said. Do you know? So it's kind of this huge, whereas I've been to bad classes where the instructor goes, everyone out the saddle, gear 14, and it's not only like giving a range of gears, it's also second guessing what everybody is going to do. And then it's about doing, we do a mixture of rhythm and power, and it's teaching rhythm that is accessible and that everybody can do very, very cleverly, with sort of tips and tricks and little bits of science that I've learned and incorporated, and kind of we have a secret magic formula that makes it the best classes, and that it makes it accessible. But even people who think, oh my God, that was a really vibey workout, but also you've got someone going, wow, actually I could do that because I wasn't put off and I didn't need to remember which one my left hand was, because everyone struggles with that. But then also kind of, with the power elements, you get people going, because I very much encourage when we're training in power to talk about power in relation to cycling. So not just like, we'll give intensities, but also you'd say, if you're an advanced rider, can you aim for this watt output? If you're a beginner, can you, so people, because everybody will always, bar 8%, most people will underestimate themselves. So even if you give an intensity and you give a gear range, most people will go 1 under. If you then say, if you think you're an advanced rider, aim for X watt amount, you see people going and turning their thing up. So it's all these kind of, so what I want people to leave from, and then you get people coming up at the end going, I have never hit that watt output in my life before. I've never thought I'd get to that gear. And I say to people, what is the worst thing that can happen? You just take a gear off. Like, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. And then everyone's like, oh yeah.
It's so funny though, isn't it?
And I think there's also this element where I always say at the beginning of the class, you see loads of memes where people going, faking it for my spin instructor. And I'm like, don't fake it. I don't want you to fake it. If you don't want to put your resistance up, don't put it up. Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't have to fake it. If you're faking it, you're in the wrong class, because there's an expectation from your instructor that that's a totally unempathetic class. I can't even remember what your question was now, but I feel like I answered it.
Yeah, you answered it really well, Melissa.
You can clip that up for the start.
Yeah, we could definitely do. No, you really did. I mean, if you touched on this earlier, I deliberately didn't want to kind of follow it up because I knew we were going to discuss this briefly. So there's the rise of the super instructor.
Yeah.
There's the certified coach. There's the certified coach via Cadence. We're not just really, over-egging this. When we talk about evidence-based, and there's an element of physiology behind it, and there's clearly an element of understanding emotional intelligence. So take that as your certified coach. Do you see there's a benefit to having both in existence? Is the super instructor, the social media person, doing anything to support the indoor cycling world?
No, in short. I think it's a different discipline, and I think it should also, there's probably parts of this with running where you think actually that's probably not running. Yeah. That's probably something else now. And I think that's almost become, like I said, some sort of performance sport, because it's not coaching, it's not indoor cycling. And so many indoor cycling instructors, because of what's happened on Instagram and TikTok, which I hate, have been led down a path of kind of confusion as to what it is they're doing. And I think when people are, especially younger instructors who are quite influenced by social media, they go, oh, that's who I want to be. And that instructor, probably because of, I think Peloton has probably done quite a lot for this. They've made their instructors into superstars, but actually, Peloton do teach safely. They don't and their trainers do huge amounts of training. I know someone who became a run coach, and what he had to do was, he's from East London actually, had to do huge amounts of education. As far as I know, I might be wrong, but the bits of Peloton that I've seen, they're not doing the TikTok trends. They're kind of more the instructor, which is like, hey, let's talk about hope, but they're still teaching at a safe cadence.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the thing is that the safest and the most enjoyable and the most accessible indoor cycling classes are the ones that look the worst on social media. And I'm sure if you did, one of your sessions and it was a safe, accessible session, just be people running. Maybe it's slightly different paces. I feel like I'm doing terribly at understanding what running training is.
You're doing really well.
But it wouldn't be like, wow, let's jump over this massive fence and like jump our own body height and then like do some parkour. It would just be like running that's making people better at running and stronger and living for longer. And I think because so much of exercise now is disposable and so fleeting, and I think that's what's happened. I think because of, I don't know if you guys have ClassPass, but ClassPass has destroyed a lot of studios and a lot of instructors. I was really keen not to have ClassPass when we opened Cadence, but they have dominated the fitness market to such a degree that if you don't have them, then you literally can't open.
Almost non-existent around here.
Oh, you just wait. But they are. It makes fitness very disposable. So you can go to a Pilates class in the morning, you can go to aerial in the afternoon, and then on a weekend you can go and do some kind of running, which means that I think someone said it's a bit like online dating. You just go and what you don't realise is that Pilates instructor spent 3 hours and 7 years of her life building up to that class. And there's kind of with ClassPass, they're known for leaving awful reviews. So if you like, they might be like, hairdryer in changing room didn't work and receptionist was wearing orange top, hate Holland, 1 star. Whereas I'm not joking. Genuinely I'm not joking. Like, I can find you. I put them on my Instagram years ago, like the most ridiculous ones. But what happens is that comes up as ride with Peter, so he'll get a 1-star review because they didn't like the hairdryer in the changing rooms. And what's happened is it's really destroyed. So what I mean by that is I think a lot of instructors now they know that there isn't, and especially in the studios in central London, there isn't that connection and there isn't that respect and that longevity and that community. So I think perhaps, and I'm trying to find a silver lining, that's why they maybe just deliver their class and there's no empathy, but there should be.
I think you're just trying to be too nice, if I'm brutally honest.
I'm going to stop. They're just, I think a lot of the time, there's just this, a lot of the time indoor cycling instructors are trained by dancers. They're not trained by indoor cycling. So people who are dancers, then they'll do the equivalent of a kind of indoor cycling cert with a terrible certifier, just so they can get it as quickly as possible. Then they'll use their dance training to teach a spin class. Yes, it'll be rhythmic, but that's where double time came from, because dancers will go, either dance the single or the double beat. And actually, in cycling, the cadences are so far away from that. I think, if I'm right, a running cadence and a cycling cadence are quite similar, which is 85 RPM. So you'd be running to drum and bass. Yeah,
that's interesting you say. So we'll aim for like 170, 165 plus really for a cadence. Yeah.
But most dancers dance to 128 BPM. So that's either very slow or it's very fast. And what most people do is they don't, I call them the kind of the Goldilocks beats, the ones that are just right, but they're much harder to find and they're much harder to include and to kind of spend time working out what they are. So people, that's what kind of full circle to people going, I'm just going to make this song fit. It's like saying to you, try and run at 128 beats per minute, you'd be going like 22 steps.
Yeah. That's so interesting. I didn't think that was such a big element in cycling.
Oh, huge. It's huge. And if you ride at the wrong cadence, that's what is putting people off, because people are not able to ride. Most people aren't able to ride at anything over 100 RPM. And they're being forced, the body's being forced to do a very unnatural movement. Yeah. It'd be like running backwards on a treadmill.
I've been in the press talking about that. I'm not joking.
Are people doing it?
Yeah, it's quite popular. Yeah.
No, okay, I made that up as something that was ridiculous. This is worrying. Wow.
So I want to take a step away from work now. So if we talk about business and life balance, congratulations, a year ago you became a mother.
Thank you.
So the balance between running multiple businesses, actually, in your circumstances, isn't it? And obviously life and your own interests in fitness. How do you feel parenthood has changed that? Has it maybe surprised you in some aspects? What's been the learning point?
I think the learning point has been that not learning point, that my partner is incredible.
Oh.
I mean, I knew that before, and I'm very, very lucky. Like I say, I sort of briefly mentioned it earlier, I went back to work 6 weeks after giving birth. Wow. Because when you run your own business, you have to. You can't, especially when we've got so many classes a week, and I was teaching 60-50% of them.
Were you teaching 6 weeks later?
Yeah, teaching 6 weeks later, back on the bike. But I taught right up. I taught a double on the Saturday morning, and she came on the Thursday or the Wednesday. So I know. I wouldn't. Yeah, I just thought I would have carried on, because I was like, well, there's literally nothing else to do. When you're pregnant, you can't do anything. So I was like, I may as well just carry on.
Wow.
But because of that, it was kind of, and Chris is running the business from home, but he was hugely kind of like, he did a huge amount of the childcare when I was out at the beginning. And I think it's what we've learned to do is just tag team for life.
Yeah.
But to the point in 45, behind the curtain, as we were starting the podcast, they were literally running out the room, baby without her trousers. Where's the trousers gone? Because Chris is programming karaoke for tomorrow night, and then we do a class at Cadence called Cadence Karaoke, and this is evidence-based training to a T. It's all about stimulating the vagus nerve and singing while you're spinning.
Oh my goodness.
It's incredible. We're the only place in the world that does it, but because we do it so properly, because of Chris's film background, the lyrics are on the screen, they come up with the music, it's all animated. So yeah, we're kind of like, I think what's hard is when you run a business, when you both run a business together, my job is very much, I go to my job and I teach the classes, whereas when we're here, if Chris is doing something at the desk and I'm like, oh no, the baby's run off with a bum out in the air and I can't find a nappy, you know what? I'm like, Chris, can you come and help?
Yeah.
So you can't just be like, no, because of course you would. So I think running a business together and having the baby, it's just a matter of kind of like, well, I mean, we haven't been out for a long time, but I think we love it so. We love it so much, and we've when you run businesses, there's at times where you think, oh God, should we just do a 9 to 5, and the toilet's broken, and you're trying to get a plumber in at 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and you think, oh God, if I went to work, but then we love it so much, and you get so caught up in it, and we've got such big plans for the next year. And I remember the Christmas that I was pregnant, we were just working loads, and I emailed someone, I was like, can I book in a meeting for 10 o'clock on Monday? And they went, well, that's Christmas Day, so probably not. I'm like, all right, boring.
That's a proper entrepreneurs, business owners accidental mindset though, isn't it?
But it also means that, on a Thursday afternoon, I can go and be in the park, or I can, decide to have an Aperol Spritz, or, I think, and I'm sure you're the same, like, not having those boundaries and being your own boss is incredible. Yeah, there are times it is really, really tough, and if an instructor gets stuck on the train and you've got to go and teach last minute or whatever, of course it's hard. But and I think also when you're kind of that mindset, and then the baby comes along, you're very much just like, I can't remember who it was, someone said that the busiest people, when you give them another job, it's not a big deal. Like if someone's really, really busy, you just say, oh, do you mind, can you just sign this form and post this letter? Yeah, of course I can. Whereas like someone who hasn't doing anything, you go, oh, can you post this letter? And they're like, oh, well, I've got lunch at 2, might be able to do it at 4, 100%. But I'll probably leave it till Saturday. And I think we're both kind of very much at get it done, nothing's a problem. It's so joyful and so fantastic, and she's just so brilliant. And she's, very, very good natured, and
that's a credit to
very,
her
very
parents,
happy.
then, isn't it? That's what you're seeing. You're seeing it in action. No, in all seriousness, you're seeing it in action. And we spoke just before we went on record, and it's a similar position. And I don't know, the one thing I learned, and I learned this from my mate who's a very high level coach in the US, and he was just like, just remember, every single minute that you're charging someone for your services, remember that they're effectively paying you to be away from your child.
Such a good point.
And then therefore take that into consideration. And the business changed a lot, and it was initially short term, the business was going to change, and then I was like, no, I've waited for this moment for years, and this is everything to me. And I just remember the real satisfaction one day when I was like, okay, well, if you now want to see me at those hours, which previously I would have been like, yeah, no problem, you just pay twice.
Yeah, that's 12 to £1 million now, actually. But I think that's a really good point about charging, and especially when you're self-employed, and it's about kind of valuing yourself, and also thinking this money is now for my child.
Yes.
And backing yourself, and it's so hard because you kind of have to approach everything with so much thought, and whereas before, or if you work for someone else, it's just all done for you. So it's so multi-layered, isn't it? Because exactly, you're paying me to be away from I haven't thought about it like that. That's such a good point.
It really just changed things for me, and it made decision making an awful lot easier. So if you're listening, if you're watching, use that, guys. So, Melissa,
that's free.
Oh, the whole thing's free. We haven't put a subscription on this. There's no advert.
Should I do one for Squarespace?
They always come up, don't they? This week at Squarespace. And Wix. They need to sponsor me. So going to catchphrase, I've come up with something very clever.
Oh yeah.
I would like to call this off the saddle. This is a quick fire round.
Oh, I love it!
Trademark.
So much fun.
So quick fire round. Answer these as quickly as possible, as freely as possible. Question number 1. What song never fails to get you hyped on the bike?
Oh, right, okay. I can't. I had this. I can't.
Failed on the first question.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's go Shackles.
Shackles. Who's that by?
The OG. Take the shackles off my feet so I can dance. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Okay. Phew, passed.
Fitness trend that you first fell for?
Fitness trends that I first skipping.
Oh, really?
I think in lockdown I say fell for, I mean probably fell over when I tried. But because of CrossFit training, I've now managed to kind of be able to do some skipping. But maybe I remember thinking that looks so cool.
Was that Lauren jumps?
Maybe that rings a bell. Definitely rings a bell.
So I remember that coming up during lockdown and being like, oh my goodness, she does all these skipping routines to dancing.
Yeah.
Where's my skipping rope from Boxing Days?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was rubbish at it.
Everyone trying.
Yeah.
I remember like about 10 people going, not sure my pelvic floor can handle that. But I now really enjoy skipping.
Oh, that's a really cool one. I like that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Guilty pleasures. I want to know TV show and food.
Food, any crisps. I'm completely... we could have done this whole hour just on crisps.
Oh, it should have been a version of hot ones, shouldn't it?
The best ones at the moment, if you would like them, are called cheese snapped.
Okay.
I know this is a fitness podcast, but
it doesn't matter.
I have to educate everybody. When I say snapped, it's the apostrophe before the D.
I felt like it would be.
Yeah. They're so orange that there can't be anything good in them at all. Or what's it's crunchy.
Oh.
Yeah,
crunchy.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. You can thank me on a different time. The best crisp ever. So any crisps.
And TV show.
Do you know what? We actually okay. My favourite TV show is Race Across the World.
Yes.
But because I worked in TV for so long, there's lots of TV that I can't or don't watch because I know how it's made, and they're sort of taken the enjoyment out for me. Imagine. And I also have a terrible attention span.
Yeah.
I still haven't watched Adolescence because Chris was like, "You need to watch it in one go," and I was like, "No, absolutely not."
I don't know about you. We just haven't really managed to watch any TV for the last year and a half.
I say Race Across the World because that was the last TV program I watched when Ivy was like 6 weeks old. It was the last series, which tracks because it's starting again this April.
Huh.
Aha!
Nice plug. You're not involved in that show anymore, remember?
For a show that I've never... Actually, I do know the exec producer. She comes to Cadence. So there you go. Wow. There you go. That wasn't even on purpose. Okay. I'll tell her. She can clip it up.
You want links to that? Then someone from the Celebrity Race Across the World was DMing me for running advice. That's my link to it.
No. So I used to. Okay. Then we can go.
You're
full
destroying
circle. Me. Scott Mills used to come to my spin studio. Yeah,
that's
there we are,
awesome.
full circle.
Well done.
Yeah, but now he lives too far away. And, he's probably quite busy with his new job.
Yeah, that's that little show he's doing.
Yeah.
If you weren't in fitness, what would you be doing?
Definitely not TV. Probably running some sort of other business. I feel like I would invent something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what that would be. Maybe a crisp. I feel like definitely maybe fitness, like cycling wear. There isn't any cool cycling wear.
Yeah.
It's all like cycling mainly for men.
Yeah.
And all the kind of cycling gear for women is terrible. So maybe inventing cool cycling clothes for women.
Well, you couldn't have done a better segue for me.
Oh, go on.
Because the final question was going to be, we're sat having a coffee in 2030.
Yeah.
Where is Cadence now? Is it Cadence fitness wear then?
No, it is. We're probably having a coffee in Cadence because there will be one in every city in the world. No, I don't know. I mean, that's the dream. Again, if anybody wants to give me probably millions of pounds. So I think, the plan is definitely the demand is there. It's just finding the money or the investment, and that takes a long time. And I think probably a lot more, hopefully, we would find that we'd be living in a world full of empathetic, educated indoor cycling instructors, because I am on a one-woman mission to make everybody feel more equipped with the cycling tools they need to teach better classes. And I think that a lot of the time instructors just don't have the knowledge, and that's not their fault, but they haven't been given the knowledge. So I want to go and give the knowledge. I feel like I'm comparing myself to some sort of disciple. Disciple on a bike.
Oh, that's really good.
Christ.
Excellent.
But no, I would like to continue, which we've been sort of the kind of this year we've been doing a lot of consultancy for studios who kind of know where they want to be and are kind of, you know, put off a little bit by these trends, and most places that aren't in big cities have a kind of older audience, or, you know, it's not just girls in their 20s, and we're kind of helping people create really good inclusive indoor cycling studios. So I'm really keen to kind of branch out and do that as many places as possible, and to help people do that.
Oh, that's really cool. I'll be completely honest with you. Other than Watt bikes as part of like physiology testing and all that kind of stuff, I've never been on an indoor bike. So, Melissa, I'm
come to Cadence. I'll give you some cheese snapped afterwards.
That would be awesome. Melissa Power, thank you ever so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you. I've had a blast. I've had an absolute blast.
You've been awesome. You've been real fun, and you've given
you.
us a real insight into what goes on behind the doors at Cadence. If people want to find out more, where can they find you?
They can find Cadence in North London, or they can see the website Cadence Indoor Cycling. And if they want to turn their lives around and certify as an indoor cycling instructor, they can do it online whenever they want. There's an online version of the course, or they can come and do it with me in person in London. Our next one is in June, so they just head to my website, melissapowered.co.uk.
That is fantastic. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Everyone, thanks so much for listening. Don't forget to hit subscribe. It's somewhere on your screen. Leave a review. And as always, if you want to get in touch, email info@performancephysique.co.uk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.